blockade. Israel controls everything that goes in and out of the territory. Gaza has no sovereignty. As UNICEF puts it, Israel has significantly exacerbated previous restrictions, limiting the number and specified categories of people and goods allowed in and out through the Israeli-controlled crossings. Israeli forces have largely restricted access to areas within 300 meters of the Gaza side of the perimeter fence with Israel. So they've surrounded Gaza with a massive fence. And whenever Palestinians protest inside Gaza, Israeli snipers shoot them, including not only peaceful protesters, but also medics, also journalists. The United Nations investigated and found that Israel intentionally shot and in many cases killed Palestinian medics and journalists during massive protests over months in Gaza in 2018 as part of the Great March of Return. UNICEF also pointed out that Israeli forces restrict access off the Gaza coast, currently only allowing fishermen to access 50% of the fishing waters that were allocated to them under the Oslo Accord. So again, violating these agreements that Israel signs. Furthermore, the unemployment rate in Gaza is one of the highest in the entire world, 46.6%. Nearly half of Gazans do not have a job. Among youth, it's even more outrageous. Nearly two-thirds, 62.5% of youth in Gaza do not have a job because Israel prevents them from having an economy. 1.3 million out of 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza, that is 62%, require food assistance. And that number, by the way, has increased because the estimate's now around 2.3 million Palestinians. And there's only one power plant in Gaza, and Israel constantly bombs it, destroying it, which means that the only capacity that it can reach is 50% of the electricity demand in Gaza, which means that there are rolling power cuts and they average 11 hours a day. So basically, if you live in Gaza, you only have electricity half the time. Meanwhile, nearly 80% of piped water in Gaza is unfit for human consumption, and Israel constantly bombs the water treatment plant, which prevents Palestinians from having water to survive. This is why figures even like the conservative former Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron, have admitted that Gaza is an open-air prison. This should not be a controversial statement. It is an open-air prison camp with 2.3 million Palestinians trapped under an Israeli blockade. This is one of the most densely populated regions of the world, and yet they're treated like cattle. They're not treated like human beings. In fact, documents from Israel's defense ministry prove that Israel controlled the amount of food that can be imported into Gaza in order to, quote, put Palestinians on a diet, to control their access to food. This was reported on a decade ago in the Guardian newspaper, and they say
as a chef, this is the shit that really fucking pisses me off, right? It's one thing to not like these motherfuckers, but how you gonna starve them like that? He's about to tell you they're on like a 1,200 calorie a day diet or something. Like Israel decided how much food these people can eat. That's pretty fucked up. Okay, that's pretty fucked up. Listen to this shit. This is gonna blow your mind. This is the shit that really got my heart. Not that I care about the falafels, because I don't. But this is the shit that really does bother me.
very clearly, this is, the establishment British mouthpiece. They say, quote, the Israeli military made precise calculations of Gaza's daily calorie needs, according to files the defense ministry released. Israel also maintained a list of foods that were permitted and banned from Gaza. Israel calculated the calorie needs for Gaza's population so as to restrict the quantity of food it allowed in. And a diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks, which is why the journalist Julian Assange is in prison and is facing life in prison. WikiLeaks published a U.S. diplomatic cable that it quoted Israeli diplomats as saying they wanted to, quote, keep Gaza's economy on the brink of collapse. And a human rights organization inside Israel called Gisha said, quote, the official goal of the policy was to wage economic warfare, which would paralyze Gaza's economy. And as an example of the restrictions that Israel imposes, it prevents Palestinians from importing things like coriander and instant coffee. I mean, preventing them from having a basic, dignified life. This is why it is absolutely correct to say that Palestinians in Gaza are living in an open-air prison camp. And because of that, according to international law, they have a legal right to armed resistance. This is spelled out very clearly by the United Nations. There is no ambiguity. And this was stated very clearly in a United